So we're diving into a book called 210 Degrees Celsius, and right off the bat, that title is designed to make you stop and think. And no, it's not a cookbook. It's actually a pretty intense metaphor for a moment in recent history that the author argues reached a societal boiling point. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the central arguments of this book and see exactly how it frames one of the most polarizing events in modern Canadian history. Okay, so what is with that name, 210 Degrees Celsius? Well, the entire book, the whole thing, is built around this powerful mechanical metaphor, the idea of auto-ignition. You really have to get this concept to understand the author's entire perspective on why the 2022 Freedom Convoy even happened. All right, so let's get literal for a second. This is the technical process the book's title comes from. Imagine it. You've got immense pressure, you've got intense heat, and when they combine, boom. Without a single spark, the engine just roars to life all by itself. The author wants us to hold on to this image, a spontaneous, powerful reaction that's created by a very specific and very intense set of conditions. And here's where the author, Barry Bussey, takes that mechanical idea and applies it to society. He's arguing that this is exactly what happened in Canada. In his view, the pressure was coming from government policy and mandates. The heat was the divisive political climate. And the result? That auto-ignition was the protest convoy. So, what exactly created all this pressure? Where did it come from? According to the author, it wasn't just one thing. It was a series of specific events that over time built up this atmosphere of intense frustration and division all across the country. Let's take a look at his timeline. In the book's telling of the story, this pressure didn't just build up overnight. The author traces the beginning all the way back to the start of the pandemic restrictions in 2020. But he really points to the 2021 snap election as a key turning point. He calls it a politically motivated move that just deepened the cracks in society. And he says this all came to a head in the fall of that year with new mandates and what he describes as really divisive language. Now, to really crystallize his argument about that political climate, the book zeroes in on this specific quote. It presents these words, attributed to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as what the author sees as a critical moment, a shift in the rhetoric from, political debate to what he calls the outright demonization of a specific group of citizens. Okay, so we've got the pressure building up, right? So now the book moves to the main event, the auto-ignition itself. It portrays the convoy not as some carefully planned top-down operation, but as a completely spontaneous eruption coming right from the grassroots. And this is the picture the author paints of the protest on the ground. He calls it an organic, unprecedented movement of, quote, everyday people. The book really emphasizes what it calls a carnival-like atmosphere, framing the whole event as a peaceful, even joyful pushback against government policies, not some aggressive occupation. Now, here's a statistic the author highlights to challenge what he sees as a major misconception. The book makes a point of saying that around 90% of Canadian truckers were already vaccinated, a rate actually higher than the general population. The suggestion here is that the protest wasn't really about the vaccine itself, but more about the principle of government mandates. But for the author, the story doesn't end when the trucks leave Ottawa. In fact, the most crucial part of his argument is what he claims it sparked. The book's subtitle is actually 16 Ways the Truckers Ignited Canada for the Long Haul, and it makes the case that the convoy's impact is still being felt today. So he lists out 16 different points, but we can really group them into these 4 big arguments. First, he contends the convoy gave a voice and a sense of hope to a part of the population that felt completely ignored. Second, that it exposed what he calls the failures of major institutions, media, government, you name it. Third, that it revealed an authoritarian side to the government. And finally, that it served as a powerful example that nonviolent resistance can actually work. Now, the book doesn't pretend that its version of the story is the only one. Actually, a central theme is that there were 2 completely different, totally irreconcilable realities of what happened in Ottawa playing out at the same time. And here they are, laid out side by side, the 2 opposing views as the author sees them. On one side, you've got the book's version, a positive, peaceful, grassroots movement for freedom. And on the other, you have the view he attributes to what he calls the cathedral, which is his term for the establishment. The ruling class of government, big business, media, and academia. He writes that this group framed the protesters as a dangerous, fringe minority, with unacceptable ideas, even calling them extremists. So in the end, the book positions the convoy as this pivotal, historic turning point for the nation. And that kind of leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about.
According to the author, this protest ignited a fire that's still burning. So it makes you wonder, what is it that transforms a protest from just a current event, something in the news cycle, into a true legacy that shapes the future long after the streets are cleared?